Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 1995 film Cruel Jaws, and am I kind of upset that I watched it? In a sense, yes, because it's a pretty boring film. There's not nearly enough good-looking shark, and there's not any good kills. Like, there's literally no good kills in this film. But there are a few moments in it that made me think, okay, I'm actually glad I watched this one because I laughed. I laughed pretty hard. It is a terrible film. Obviously, this is almost a decade after Jaws the Revenge. So these Italian filmmakers decided, let's see if people still care about this whole Jaws thing. Apparently, this was actually in some areas marketed as Jaws 5, Cruel Jaws, even though I'm sure they weren't really allowed to be doing that because it actually has no connection to the original Jaws films except for the fact that they say on IMDb that it was based off of Peter Benchley's book, which is what the original Jaws was based off of, and I think the second Jaws as well. It just keeps showing up in the credits for IMDb. So I'm sure they did read the book and took some inspiration from it. That's fine, but yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, real quick, I have messed with the audio levels for this because it had come to my attention that now that I have ads on my channel, that there's a big volume disparity between my audio versus ad audio. So I tried to increase this to try and get it closer. So please leave me a little feedback in the comments and let me know if it's better now. Is it closer? Do I need to up it a little bit more or take it down a little bit more? Please let me know. That would be helpful. Anyway, Cruel Jaws, directed by Bruno Mattei, who also did Emmanuel and the Erotic Night, Hell of the Living Dead, Violence in a Women's Prison, Rats, Night of Terror, which sounds like one I want to watch, Scalps, Night Killer, which I have heard is like amazingly bad. I need to see Night Killer, Shocking Dark, and Mondo Cannibal, just to name a few. He's done a lot. Written by Mattei as well as Robert Feen, and based on the book by Peter Benchley. They apparently contain footage from the original Jaws and Jaws 2. When I watched it, I didn't really see actual lifted footage. I saw, obviously, moments where they took inspiration and tried to, like, recreate shots and shot ideas from the original Jaws, like that one attack on the woman when it was, like, the two couples on the beach and then they get into the water. It was kind of supposed to be very much like the very first attack scene in the first Jaws film. I don't think that was actually lifted from the first Jaws. It looked a bit different to me, but it also was shot kind of oddly where it was like just her and then like just him trying to get to her, and he never ended up in the same frame at any time. So maybe, but I didn't really see anything necessarily that was specifically lifted from it. Obviously, that would be a problem, but apparently Scream Factory, according to what I read online, I don't know if I believe this or not, Scream Factory supposedly had interest in releasing this film and then passed on it because they were like, there could be some legal issues there with how close things are to Jaws, and if this is true, lifted some actual scenes from Jaws. But you can tell, obviously, though, that for the actual shark portions, they took, like, real footage of sharks and just kind of, like, tried to make them make sense in there. And one of the craziest things about it is those moments, like, don't even match what the regular film stock looks like. So, like, it changes in, like, graininess and everything, and that's kind of, like, one of the funniest things for me, personally, about this. It's something. Anyway, marketed as Jaws 5, Cruel Jaws, like I said. Top secret Navy materials and some wreckage that these dudes plan to retrieve and sell. I figured they would get chomped at that point. Not a bad way to start the film, to be honest. Like, it got off on decent footing with this idea of, like, okay, wreckage of a secret naval ship that had something aboard. Like, it's not a bad idea at all with this, but doesn't play out well after that. So as soon as these guys are starting to go down in the water, which was kind of a cool start to the film, I was like, yeah, they're going to get killed. Eventually they do get killed. Looks terrible, not great because they're really not trying to show any sharkage. Apparently from something I read, they had like an animatronic shark that they tried to do, but it really wouldn't work well. So then they were just like, man, well, we're just going to go get footage from existing sharks and try and make that work. Did not. Does the shark intentionally cave these dudes in? Because it looks like it. when they get into that kind of like underwater cave area and then the shark is coming after them, like they shoot at him. I think that maybe they hit him, and then it looks like he's like intentionally like ramming the rock around the opening to like shut them in there, and then it makes them go out another way, and then he goes and gets them. Like, is this shark showing some intelligence? Because that's kind of cool if they went down that route, especially because it's not like a good movie. So why not have this be like a super smart shark, especially with a title like Cruel Jaws? Like, sharks can't be cruel because they're just animals, but if there's like some super intelligent shark, then they can. Although, I guess that's what they were getting at with this. That is actually what they were getting at. I just realized, it dawns on me right now. Good time. It dawns on me that that is what was going on. Like, that was part of the experimenting that the government was experimenting on to try and get these killer sharks, which I'll talk about that a little bit later, and like the validity of the idea within this film. Yeah. All the quick shots of pieces of the shark is unbelievably disorienting. It's really hard to tell what's going on during the shark attacks. I know they were cutting it that way because they don't want people to see like how bad it looks, and they were really just using other footage that didn't have like an animatronic shark that would look good. So they're just trying to like piece things together as best they can. So it's just going to look bad. Like, it was just a bad idea from the get-go. So it's just going to look bad. I don't appreciate it though. It's very disorienting. You're like watching, you're like, no clue what's happening because the cuts are just like so fast. Oh no, not dolphins. I can't. As soon as I saw dolphins, I was like, this is giving me flashbacks to Jaws 3D. I cannot handle dolphins again in this. Like, how hard are they going to go on these dolphins? Thankfully, they went less hard on the dolphins in this than they did in Jaws 3D, but they also added seals. And the seal thing was also pretty dumb. So I feel like it kind of evens out with Jaws 3D, where it's just like you got these stupid dolphins plus stupid seals, but they're featured less, as opposed to Jaws 3D, where it's just like tons of stupid dolphins. Well, not tons, but way more than you need. But anyway, I was just like, oh my gosh. And then they have the character of Dag, who looks like Hulk Hogan. Let's call it. Let's call it right now. Hulk Hogan was popular for a long time. Obviously, someone was a big Hulk Hogan fan when they were making this film, and they were like, you know what Dag needs to look like? Hulk Hogan. Let's do it. He's got that handlebar mustache. He's got that almost white blonde hair, which apparently is what I had when I was a child, like very like almost white blonde hair, but I didn't look like Hulk Hogan. Don't worry. I just thought it was funny that they have a Hulk Hogan looking character in it. Billy's been doing underwater research. Just means that he'll be the smart guy who's going to help take down this whole shark situation, obviously. Because especially with bad films like this, you always have the research guy, the science guy, the smart guy. And it's Billy. And they call him out like immediately. So you're like, oh yeah, this guy will be integral in figuring out what's going on and trying to take the shark down, which ends up being the case. The dead body in this actually looked kind of crappy, but also kind of like good and gnarly at the same time. It was kind of this weird thing. I don't know if anyone else felt that way. You can let me know in the comments. Where like, when I was looking at it at moments, this is the first body they find of one of those divers that washes ashore. Like, in some moments it looked terrible, and in some moments it actually looked kind of good and gross and gnarly, and I was just like, I kept going back and forth. I'm like, I can't decide if these are good practical effects or bad practical effects. Or maybe they're just in the middle. Like, that's fine. Maybe we'll just throw it there. Sheriff wants to postpone the regatta because of the potential shark, and people are brushing him off. Kind of sounds like another movie I've seen before. Jaws, yes. Yeah, they take a lot from Jaws, obviously, including this whole conflict where it's like, oh, smart people who know what's going on, we don't want to listen to you. We got tourists here. We got things to sell. We need to do this big event. So what do? They bring in these high-tech cages. They bring in the military, like the army that they said they had like patrolling, which, first of all, I don't think you can get the army in for that. Second of all, once stuff actually goes down with the shark attacks, it's like the army disappeared. Because then it's just like Ronnie and Bobby and Billy and Dag, like those people who are supposed to handle this situation. Like, what happened to literally the army guys you see in the helicopter, like flying around patrolling with guns? Where did they go? It's just like they just forgot about that and kept the film going. I was just like, okay. Real quick, pause for horror hydration. Thank you. They lifted that water level kill of the lady from Jaws, and it's funny how the guy's to the right of her and is shot totally separate. I already kind of talked about this in the beginning of it, but it does look hilarious. Like he's trying to get out there in the water to her, like swimming to her, and he just never gets there because they just like, it's him, it's her, it's him, it's her, never in the same frame. One of the things that I definitely laughed at, and I think you can too. Obviously, Bobby has some sort of issue with the dudes dressed in black who beat him up on the beach. I think that kind of spawned from was like, hey, don't be dating my sister, man, because he was the son of what was his name? Lewis was the last name. That guy who was, taking some money under the table from the mob from New York, apparently, because this is set in Florida. Because as we all know, mobsters like to go to Florida for investments and all that stuff, at least in films around this time. So, yeah. So that interaction I thought was pretty funny, where they just kind of show up and they just beat him down. And I was just like, okay. They didn't really follow up too much on that type of thing. It's just kind of something they threw in there and was just like, okay, we did that. We're done with it. Interesting to see if there's any backstory on why these dudes are poisoning dolphins. I don't get it. Was it because they hate Dag and Billy? Like that they were trying to poison these dolphins? I didn't really pick up on that. If someone can explain it to me, it's just kind of like a weird thing. Also, isn't it something that would be easy to be caught doing, I feel like? Which they are, obviously. Billy's knowledge of sharks is extremely unimpressive, but everyone seems to be a lot dumber than him, so they just go with that. Like, literally the moment where he's trying to, like, say everything he knows about sharks, it's, like, basic stuff. It's like, they're aggressive. They are driven to eat. They swim. Like, it is, like, the dumbest, most basic information. I was just like, oh. But everyone's, like, so impressed with him. They're like, I mean, you're the research guy. Like, he's supposed to in-depth, like, know these things, and he does not know, like, barely anything. It's like, it's like a fish that kills. It's ridiculous. The moment that the seal pushes the villain in the water is pretty ridiculous. That was really horribly shot. And not only that, but they do it twice, because they did it at the end of the film, too. And these are the worst things about the seals. Just dumb. Like, it's just like, oh, we have a trainer who knows how to make these seals do things. Like shake. So basically what they did is they made him try to shake by touching the guy, and then the guy like overreacts to it. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. That was Lewis. And he just goes overboard, and I was like, come on, man. Like, I kind of feel like the seals became worse than the dolphins in this one, for sure, because of that whole situation. Opening a diner for sharks could be lucrative. It could be lucrative. We don't know. That was one of the lines that was thrown out there by the sheriff, who was just kind of like yields to them, like, fine, have the regatta, I don't really care. You're going to open a diner for sharks. I thought that was a good line. I really did enjoy that. I kind of laughed at it. I was like, they're into making money. Like, pitch this. Pitch this as a thing. Diner for sharks. Let's do it. But the fact that when the shark shows up, he doesn't really eat many people. I mean, I guess it's not an all-you-can-eat buffet. It's just like a one-meal thing. I don't know. I like when Dag starts reading to Gloria and she's asleep within the first sentence. Like, usually they take a little bit of time in those scenes if they want to show the kid going to sleep, where, like, they start, like, they listen for a little bit and then they start getting a little sleepy and then they nod off. Like, he starts reading and within the first sentence she's just like, and then the idea is she's asleep. They're like, we don't have time. Let's go. We got to get this moving. How much did this shark net around the location of the regatta cost? Seems expensive. It shows them setting it up, which is like those like metal things. Like, that's a lot of trouble to go to for a frickin' regatta. Like, how much money were they getting out of this regatta? And it really seemed like the mobsters were very invested in this regatta happening. Well, they're just trying to launder money, from what I understand. Like, they were talking about how they put a lot of money into, like, real estate. They're just trying to launder it, right? So I don't understand, like, why they care that much about something like the regatta going down. Like, this film's obviously weird. The tourists who show up just to see the killer shark, I thought was funny. That's a great idea. Great for a So Bad It's Good film, where they're, like, excited to see people getting murdered. They literally show up and they're asking, like, oh, we heard there was a shark that killed someone. We're here to see it. Like, you know, they're the people who show up and they're just like, we are hoping to see someone get murdered by the shark. Like, we really want to see this. Want to see the blood in the water. Want to see the appendages flailing out of the water. Just a vicious, grisly attack. That's those people. How many others showed up like that? I like the bit of dialogue that says, quote, it's almost like someone trained it to attack and kill. You know what? Sharks will attack people because they need to eat. I think that was hilarious. I mean, obviously that's thrown in there to kind of like be the lead into what they talk about later eventually, where they're just like, oh, this was a top secret government experiment where they wanted to make killer sharks, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. Maybe a few minutes. I don't know. I like the sequence of numerous people just yelling that there's a shark with specific camera focus on each of them. Like the moment when the shark shows up during the regatta and they just have all these shots of focusing on one person and that person is yelling, shark, 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 there's a shark. You only really need one person, maybe two people doing that. They did a few people and they just kept doing it. Like, they go too far in this film of like trying to nail things down that like don't need to be nailed down. And you're just like, why are we doing this? Some of the shark footage during the attacks of the regatta isn't actually too bad. It's mainly just panicked people yelling, running, and flailing, though. Like, there was a little bit of okay-ish shark attack footage, but then the majority of what's going on at the regatta is literally just people running, flailing, and yelling. And there's so much of that. Again, like the people just yelling shark, there's so much of just the running, flailing, yelling. I was just like, oh. Does the mob really think shark attacks will tank their real estate investments? This goes back to the whole regatta question too. Like, they're just trying to launder money here. Like, I don't think they really care. I mean, sure, they may care about like the property value because they're trying to eventually sell the property to fully launder the money, but I don't know. It seems a little weird. I like when Billy says the shark's behavior is, quote, strange and, quote, anomalous, especially when he didn't know jack about sharks. Yeah, it's one of those things where he demonstrates he knows almost nothing about sharks, then later says, this behavior is very strange, very anomalous. It's like, dude, you don't even know what their behavior is. Literally before you just said, like, they swim and they eat, basically. And like, now you're like, oh, this is not typical of a shark. But, once again, this is another one of those things that's thrown in as, like, the clue towards what we're getting to about what was really going on. The shark is so stiff when it rams the bottom of Ronnie's boat. Go back and watch that sequence. Like, it doesn't move at all. It's just like, boom. Like, it stays as one just, like, rigid board, and it's just like, It's pretty funny. That's one of the things I laughed at. I really like that. It's not the one I laughed at the most, though. That's coming up. Ronnie's girl dousing the boat in gas looked hilarious. Then the explosion. We get a nice explosion in this. Plus, just the shot of like her just like dousing everyone on the boat, and then it blowing up. It was a very well shot scene from a funny standpoint. It was hilarious. Loved it. And the perspective of it was kind of like this weird angle. I was just like, I dig it. It's terrible. So the sheriff wants to call all the boats back in because the Lewis boat blew up. This insinuates that he thinks the shark blew it up. Does anyone else feel me on this? Like, he literally calls everyone back because he first said he's like, here's a reward. Basically, there's a reward out to go kill the shark. Okay, well, just like in Jaws. And people go out. A boat blows up, Ronnie's boat, and then the sheriff's like, get everyone back here. We got to go. Does he literally must think the shark blew the boat up. How? How would the shark blow the boat up? No, you let people continue, and they will take care of the shark. There's still, to your knowledge, one shark out there that needs to be taken care of. And there's money in it. Do you think people are going to come back because some other dude's boat blew up? What happened to all the army personnel they said they had patrolling for the regatta? It's like the attacks happened and they left. I know I already talked about this, but it is so ridiculous that, like, they have these precautions, mainly the army there to take care of it, and then, like, as soon as stuff goes down, they're gone. And no one even mentions it. You don't see them. It's like they literally just quit. They're just like, nah, we're good. The helicopter scene is a masterpiece of awful filmmaking. I did like that. All the cuts, the fake-looking gun, How it looks when the guys get thrown out of it, amazing. I laughed really hard at this one. That sequence is prime cheese, and I love this film for that sequence. I mean, and then they have that kind of like close up of the guy who pulls the gun out, and it looks so plastic. It's so fake. And then when he gets tipped out of it into the water and attacked, like it looks so bad, but it is wonderful. So bad it's good. I laughed pretty hard. So the shark was a secret government experiment to create an underwater killing machine. Wow. So what were they going to do with this? Like what was the point? Like where are they sending this? Like your enemies don't hang out in the water, like underwater. Like were they thinking that they could get them to like go after submarines or something, or like go after large battleships or something like that? Like this one shark is not going to be able to take that out. Even a bunch of those sharks wouldn't be able to take that out. Like it seems like it's such a just loosely thrown together idea here. But maybe I'm just thinking about it too much. Probably. What a moment when Dag fixes the engine by just hitting it. When they can't get their boat going, and he's down there, and he's just like, try it now. And they're like, no, it doesn't work. And then he literally just like whacks it with his palm, and he's just like, now. And they're just like, oh yeah. Magic. Magic. The shot of the shark with the diver in its mouth may be my favorite. It looks so terrible. Like, the diver looked terrible. He was so limp. They didn't have enough, like, body shape to look realistic, and they're just, like, flopping out of the mouth. And the way the mouth is, like, so mechanical, like, so rigidly and stupidly moving, and not even closing all the way, and they focus on it for so long, like, that is where I laughed the hardest. And my wife happened to see that moment, and she was like, what? She's like, what is going on here? I'm like, it's terrible. That's all you need to know. It's terrible. So they're going to blow up the wreckage because that's where the shark lives. It's not in there, so what's the point? Like, I didn't understand the whole thing. Like, even if it seems like they had no idea to know for sure if the shark was actually in the wreckage. So it's like they were going with this idea of, if we blow up its home, because we think it lives in the wreckage, then maybe it'll just go away. Or maybe it'll die from a broken heart because its home is gone. I don't know. Like, does anyone else have an idea on this? Like, any of the stuff that I don't understand from this film, if anyone has ideas, go ahead and put it in the comments, please. Please. It's all over, and people watch a dolphin and seal show. I'm getting tired. Of course. Plus, Sam gets pushed in the water again by a seal. Again. So yeah, you have your big triumphant moment, and people aren't like embracing or something like that. They're just like sitting at this stupid dolphin and seal show, which obviously just seemed like a reason to be like, look, we paid these handlers to bring these dolphins and seals in. We got to use them as much as we can. That makes kind of sense. What a terrible way to end the film. The audio in this film's terrible. Music drowns out dialogue at times, and there are echoes indoors. If anyone noticed that, like, the audio is very poorly done. And there are times that, not a lot, but there are a few times where the dialogue doesn't actually sync with the mouth of the character speaking. That's another thing. So audio in general just... And I think it was shot in English, though. I don't think it was, like, dubbed over in English. I'm pretty sure. The acting is horrid. It's pretty bad. But that helps with It's So Bad It's Good. So, some good, some bad there. I like how the footage of sharks doesn't even look close to the quality of the rest of the film. Yep, already said that, but it bears repeating. So I'm going to rate this two ways. I'm going to rate this as a straight-up film and as a So Bad It's Good film. As a straight-up film, this is obviously a half star. It's terrible. Well, yes, terrible. Half star. As a So Bad It's Good film, though, I'm going to go 2.5. 2.5 is a So Bad It's Good, because there was some stuff I really liked, but the pacing is so terrible, and there's a lot of stuff that's just plain boring. So I'm going 2.5. Thought about 3, but I'm going to put it at 2. But would love to hear everyone else's opinion on Cruel Jaws. Go ahead and put it in the comments. I mean, I'm fine with having watched this, I guess. It's an experience. I would recommend people watch it once for the experience, but I'm going to put it in the playlist for Jaws films that I have on my channel, because since it was marketed as a Jaws 5, and since it's kind of partially taken from the base material of Jaws, I'm just going to put it in there because it makes sense to me. But anyway, make some comments. Tell me about what you like about this film, interesting facts about this film, maybe. And do me a favor, hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I would greatly appreciate that. It helps keep me motivated here. Also, hit the notification bell button because that way you'll know when I'm putting up new videos, which I'm doing 4 a week at this point. So thank you very much for doing those things. I really appreciate it. And thank you for checking out this particular video. And until next time, keep it brutal.